Fuck. Alright, fuck it, man. This shit crazy. Anyway, welcome back. Another week of verses. Today we're gonna do something kind of fun. It's one of those things that I kind of keep up with in my spare time, downtime, that I put a lot of research into just from year after year. I like the geographics of things. Like I keep up with interstate roadway systems, places, states, cities, capitals, shit like that. So along those lines, I like to keep up with the different geographic facts and trivia. You know what I mean, like the trivia games and shit like that. And something interesting that I was comparing, right? Being from Monticello, Florida, you know, you would see that I'm kind of biased to southern states, things of that nature. But born and raised in Florida, love Florida. But anytime we start talking about like vacation destinations, tourist attractions, things like that, a lot of times people will bring up California as a legitimate rival or competitor, quote unquote, to Florida. So I looked into that, right, and I could see a lot of the things that would get California brought up in that conversation. So I was thinking, with that being said, that'd be something really good to dive into to get y'all opinions out there. So for this week's edition of Versus, we're going geographic. We're gonna do Florida as a state, the whole state, not just a particular area or city, but the state of Florida versus the state of California. We're going to bring out the goods, we're going to bring out the bads, we're going to point out the pros, the cons, um, some good things, some bad things, financials, things you can do, and see which one we feel wins out. Now, I will be objective. I have to say that just as an aside, just so nobody feel like, oh, he's gonna blah, blah, blah. I'm from Florida. Throw that out there, but I will base it on just the facts, not opinions, not, well, it's gonna be opinions, but it's gonna be opinions based on facts, but it's not gonna be opinions made by emotion. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. It's not gonna be emotional. No, it's gonna be fact based. It's gonna be a real thought out discussion. I've kind of like really took my time and thought this out. You know what I mean? So for a lot of people who looking for some destinations and you want to go party at the beach and some shit like that, these two states are probably gonna be the two that come up the most. So what we're gonna do is dive right into it. Florida versus California, coming up on Versus. Stay tuned.
There's something wrong. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Nah, I definitely agree with that shit. Damn, Beretta, man. Fuck. Bro, I know you got bicycle, man, but you gotta think sometimes. Shit. Some of this shit don't even Bro, I was talking to my suckers on the wall. Listen, mirror on the wall. Who the really nigga in it?
I said in the monologue, you know what I mean? Coming to you live from Monticello, Florida, which is obviously one of the most southern states, not the farther south, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people get that confused. That would be Hawaii. Hawaii is actually the most southern state of the USA. But we talking Florida versus California. And because obviously I'm from Florida, we'll start with Florida. We're going to do pros, cons. We're going to do goods, bads. We're going to do advantages, disadvantages, so on and so forth. So let's start with some of the obvious advantages. Florida is known as the Sunshine State. It gets a lot of sunshine. That shit gets hot, really, if you really want the truth. But they see it as sunshine, beautiful beaches, things of that nature. It was named after flowers, if I'm not mistaken. You know what I'm saying? Now, that one is like the whole way back where they discovered it, like the land of the flowers or something like that. Florida does have a long, wide coastline. It's a peninsula, so water covers it on three sides. It's not an island. It's not surrounded by water, but peninsula is covered with three sides. You got the Gulf of Mexico to the west. You got Atlantic to the east, and it's a subtropical climate, meaning it's not all the way tropical because I think the Tropic of Cancer or something like that is a few miles southern before you get to that latitude line. But as far as temperature wise, it's gonna mostly be kind of hot, muggy, high humidity. Like I said, I mean, surrounded by water on three sides. But if you do fishing, any type of water activities, oh man, it's like that shit goes all the way around the coast. You can go like from the whole west coast, starting from Jacksonville all the way down to Miami. Then you can come around on to the whole other side, do the same thing. I mean, they have beaches for days in Florida. I mean, beaches won't be no issue. Now, because Florida is surrounded by water on all three sides, it's like it also is seen as somewhat of a sponge, meaning it's not solid rock like a New York or something like that, where you see all these big ass skyscrapers. That's because the bedrock that they build, them big ass, tall ass buildings, that shit goes deep into the ground, right? In Florida, one thing, if anybody's from Florida, you're gonna find out very quickly. You can't just be going deep into these grounds out here, man, because a lot of this shit is that wet, soggy, sinkhole-ish type fucking land, man. It's like, if you ever fell into a sinkhole or know somebody who fell into a sinkhole or seen one just come out of nowhere, do you know what I'm talking about? It's really saturated with water. Fun fact, you know we got to put these fun facts on these versus episodes, right? Fun fact. Disney World. I know y'all quite familiar with Disney World. I refer to that shit a lot on these versus episodes. I mean, I was a Disney kid. I grew up in that era. Walt Disney was able to purchase that land that eventually became Disney World for a very good price, because at the time that it was purchased, it was known as a swamp. It was a swampy land. They figured it wasn't worth nothing. It wasn't really valuable. I mean, it was all type of alligators, all type of shit. It just, people were scared of it. But he drained it and was able to get it to, he bought a lot of it. And that's how that Orlando, Central Florida area ended up becoming the tourist powerhouse that it is today, just based on the fact that the land wasn't sexy, for lack of a better word, you know what I mean? Like, you really had to do some work to that motherfucker. But it was the fact that they did that work and it was able to capitalize on something that no one else saw as valuable. But it's a lot of places in Florida that's going to fall victim to like just drainage problems, sea level problems, this and that. But we still talking about the pros. I think the beaches and the amount of beaches and some of the clearest waters that you're gonna see is gonna be on a lot of Florida beaches. I will say that. I mean, I have family all over Florida. Obviously, my people from Miami, so it's like going down there, just kind of thinking out. Florida has a lot of scenery. I mean, it's one of those things that if you grew up in Florida, it's unmistakable. Like, if I see a picture of something, I can instantly tell if it's California or if it's Florida, just because I know what Florida looks like. Key thing, this other key thing too, palm trees. Palm trees are common in both states, right? But, another fun fact, pay attention to the Florida palm trees versus the California palm trees. If anybody got a sharp eye, you will notice one major difference. It's like, it's so obvious that a lot of people probably miss it. But one of the biggest difference between the palm trees between Florida and California, California's palm trees are much taller. Much taller. And for a while, I always wondered why. Like, if you see like a lot of those Beverly Hills type of like shows where they got the camera, those palm trees is taller than a motherfucker, you know what I'm saying? But when you see like Miami or like Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, like the palm trees are much shorter. And that has a lot to do with the land. Because if you know, California, they got a whole lot of other shit that we gonna get into later in this video. But as far as the land that it's on, the rock itself has tectonic activity, all type of shit going on. But in Florida, they can't get but so tall because the ground itself is saturated with so much water, and it works better for the tree's survival. Now, obviously, with it being so close to the water and it getting the amount of rain that it gets, like water isn't really an issue with the plants, but the water is a major issue when it comes down to the human population, because I think I was reading somewhere where Miami is one of those cities that they thinking if the global warming and if all of that is actually what they saying it is and the sea levels rising, Miami would definitely be affected just because it's subject to flooding, and the land itself is given away to the sea, meaning it's not like sitting up to where the sea can't really bother it. Like every year the ocean takes piece of the land and it kind of like erodes it away. It's slowly eroding into the ocean, or however you want to put it. But that is kind of one of those things that in time that's going to be a problem, but as of right this very second is not much of a problem, not something to think about, you know what I mean? But as far as temperature wise, I would classify the winters as maybe the only like downside, and that's not really a downside because I mean, in Florida, 20 degrees is considered cold. Now I understand compared to like these other like real states up north, like the New Yorks and the motherfucking Montanas and Canadas and all that shit up there, like they see real fucking cold. Like, you know what I mean? It cold down here is not nothing up under zero. Like it usually it don't never really get that cold. It might snow. Like in my 35 years, I think I've seen maybe a snowflake or two, like maybe once or twice. But that shit is rare, far in between, so you don't have to worry about no snow. Attractions, oh man, just name it, man. Like I said, Walt Disney kicked it off with that Central Florida region. And since then, I mean, everybody else be kind of getting in on the fun. I mean, if you go to Orlando, I mean, they just gonna fucking shove a damn tour guide down your throat, because it's like everything's down there. The Universal Studios, Island of Adventure, SeaWorld. Just, I can go on and on with just the attractions, but I mean, I think we already kind of covered those in one of these other videos. Now, we gotta talk about some of the cons. I mean, some of the negatives about Florida. I mean, because we gotta be fair. I already mentioned that the water is somewhat of an issue for a lot of the human population as it was settling in, because the water is, the land is so spongy and so absorbent, and it's so much water surrounding it. But the other problem is the temperature of the water, right? What I mean by that is, as it starts to warm up, like as it goes from, I say by April, May, starts to warm up. By the time you get to June, and people from Florida already know this, you're looking at this thing called hurricane season. Now, the reason why that's significant is because it's not like the middle of the country, like where they have Tornado Alley. You know what I mean? It's not like the Ring of Fire where they have a lot of earthquakes and volcanoes. Now, Florida's probably number one thing that I would say probably would be a disadvantage is its hurricane situation. Now, any place on the coast, whether you on the west coast of Florida, the east coast of Florida, or even if you're not even on the coast of Florida, you know what I'm saying? Because from where Monticello, Tallahassee, all of those, they're not really on the coast. But a good sized hurricane will fuck this shit up, you know what I mean? But the hurricanes around here, the reason why they're a problem is because of the temperature of the water and the proximity to the land. For example, it's like most coastal cities in Florida are heavily populated, you know what I mean? And the water itself is going to be conducive to the strengthening of a lot of these major storms. Now, if you familiar with Florida, you would know that in the right conditions, it can go from sunny to like pouring down raining in the drop of a goddamn dime. Like, it doesn't take much for that water to heat up, evaporate, do whatever the fuck it does up there and start getting thunderous and violent like a motherfucker. Another fun fact, Tampa, from what I read, Tampa and that Tampa Bay area is known as one of the highest percentage of lightning strikes in the USA. So it also brings a lot of lightning around the state of Florida as well, just because it's a lot of violent thunderstorms coming up out of nowhere. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all of that up, right? Because that goddamn Atlantic Ocean and that motherfucking Gulf of Mexico, them shits is warm. Now, when you start seeing them tropical disturbances and depressions out there, when them shits hit a certain part of that water, you can watch the news, right? And they'll say, okay, you got a disturbance or whatever. Fuck around and miss the news for a day or two. By the time you look back at that bitch gonna be a category 5, and them little paths, if that bitch say Florida, right? And this is one thing my grandma told me, right? If the hurricane is coming anywhere near Florida, the whole state gonna get rain and wind. Like, regardless of where it's going. Just because Florida by land size, that shit not no Texas. It's not no Alaska. It's not like super fucking big. You know what I mean? It's relatively big, but it's not super big. Like I say, if you look at the fucking structure of Florida, not the top part from Pensacola to Jacksonville, but look at the down part from Jacksonville to Miami. From the eastern side, which is the Atlantic, to the western side, which is the Gulf, it's like kind of somewhat narrow. So it don't take much for a hurricane to cross over all that shit. Long story short, it ain't really no missing that shit. Unless that shit misses the whole state. If it hits any part of the state, the whole state usually has to be somewhat prepared. Now, direct hits are catastrophic, but like I said, Florida people are usually familiar with hurricanes. Now, I will say this. For the most part, that's pretty much the worst thing you have to deal with. Now, since we are talking about disadvantages and negatives, I would say with all the rain and all the water being so close around in Florida, mosquitoes tend to be a problem. Bugs in general, critters in general. And if we going down that road, we got to cross this road of these fucking alligators and crocodiles. Like, them motherfuckers is big down here. Like, if you got a pond or any type of thing like that close to your house, it's not going to be uncommon to see a fucking alligator in that shit. And either you go Florida Fish and Wildlife, you shoot that motherfucker. But, I mean, they are more at home at Florida than a lot of people are, to be honest with you. That being said, now let's go and dive into California, because we don't want to leave California out. Motherfucking talk show, nigga. Alright, I'm bullshit, my man. But, hey, like I was saying, now let's talk about California, you know what I mean? Now, when we talk about California, I already know the first image that's probably popping up to a lot of motherfuckers' head is Hollywood. Big ass sign on the mountain, Hollywood. That part, you know what I mean? I get it, you know what I mean? But we all are talking about the whole state. So I wanted to make sure I clarify, because later on in this season I might do a city version where we just specify by Los Angeles. But we talking about the whole state of California now. So, you know what I mean? Just like I did with Florida, we gotta be fair. Because shit, Florida got a lot of big major cities too, but I focused on the whole state. Same thing with California. Now, California as a state, that bitch big as fuck. That bitch big. If you look at where that shit is, to how that bitch big. Now, obviously, California is also known for the gold rush they had back in the early, just back in the earlys. We're gonna say back in the earlys. Like, don't make me call out those dates. We're gonna say back in the earlys, man. Motherfucker was running over there looking for gold. And some people was finding gold. And just like how people are, if you heard such and such and such and such and found some gold, then you like, fuck this shit over here. I'm finna stop what I'm doing and go do what he doing because I heard he got rich. You know what I mean? Not because that's what you was finna do anyway, but because most people on some follow the leader type shit and they want to go out there and make a go of it because they seen somebody else had success. Not even thinking about the other fucking hundreds and hundreds of people who went over there thinking that same fucking thing and ain't find shit. But anyway, that's where you get the 49ers from. Like, I found that shit out watching Scooby-Doo, as a matter of fact. Like, the whole minor 49er thing, like, that was where the whole San Francisco 49ers came from. There was miners looking for gold. They were called the minor 49ers. Like, shit. I was like, okay, boom. You know what I'm saying? You can learn something from everywhere. But gold was really one of the big things about California in those days that kind of brought a lot of traffic, a lot of opportunity, and a lot of people migrated to the West. Now, as America was developing, right, I'm quite sure that if you even somewhat familiar with history, you know that that shit mainly started on the East Coast and kind of worked its way to California. The reason why I'm saying all that is because when it was really first starting, that shit was wild. It really wasn't no structure, no law. So motherfuckers was doing what the fuck they wanted to do over there. That's why you get all these westerns where motherfuckers just go out the street and like, hey, from all the shit that I've read and came across, that shit was really like that. Like, god damn, man, you know what I mean? They were policing themselves, but that shit was some real wild, wild west shit. Robbing banks and all that crazy shit like that. But back to more modern times, like I said, like we did before, we're going to talk about some of the pros. Now, as far as scenery, they play good games with how they do the scenery, right? Because on its face value, California has a lot of similarities to Florida. Like they're gonna tell you weather, they're gonna tell you they got beaches. They're gonna say the only difference is one ocean is the Atlantic and one ocean is the Pacific. Yada yada yada. But the beaches, they got a nice long coastline. They got palm trees. They got beautiful scenery. This, that, and the third. Yada yada yada. Now, that is somewhat true to a certain degree, but I'm going to also tell you why that's not true. But we're going to get into that right now. We're just doing all the advantages, all the good things. Now, they also are an entertainment mega house. I will say that now. I mean, I know Atlanta here lately has been kind of the focal point as far as TV and music and shit like that. But California and Hollywood and Los Angeles, that is still the entertainment, like, one of the front runners. Like, people go over there just to kind of make it just in Hollywood. Like, they'll pretty much put their whole life in their hands and just run over there because it can make you a star. You know what I mean? Los Angeles by itself. Another fun fact, like I said, I like to throw these in there just as they come. Los Angeles and Jacksonville, Florida, they have something in common that's kind of cool to me that I realized, but I didn't realize it until you actually see it on the map. Interstate 10. I-10, yes, I-10. I-10, you can drive from Jacksonville, Florida on that same interstate all the way to Los Angeles, California. I mean, shit, I wouldn't fucking do it. I mean, I hate fucking driving. That's a long way. But it's that same interstate. It's along kind of that same longitude that they own. I think that's pretty similar to the comparisons that I'm trying to draw. So that also means that from a temperature comfort wise, that they're gonna be somewhat similar as far as those regions go. Now, as we start to get into some of the disadvantages, this is the stuff that Californians kind of leave out as they're selling it. Yes, I give you, they got some of the same climates in certain areas, some of the same beaches. They got a lot of nice scenery. And entertainment, they got a lot of entertainment. They got a lot of opportunity as far as wealth and opportunity as far as jobs, so on and so forth. Now, what they also fucking have is more than one climate region. As I said earlier, Florida, the whole state of Florida, is considered subtropical. Not so much in California. California stretches all the way up to Oregon. When you get up there to the northern part of California, you don't hear as much about that as you do Southern California. Like, they'll glorify the shit out of fucking Southern California because that's where they snap in the pits. That's where Los Angeles, that's where you get all these, like, they're kind of eye candy cities, you know what I mean? But in some places, Northern California, that's almost damn near uninhabitable. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that shit that's not explored. A lot of that shit that's goddamn mountainy, snowy, and all kind of shit. You know what I mean? So it's not all glitz and glamour. Like if you want to make that same comparison to Florida, the northern part of Florida really is just moss grass and swamps. You know what I mean? But the reason I pointed that out is because that same land can be used to make it whatever. It's not like there's something causing you not to use it. That's why I use Orlando. Like that used to be the same kind of land, and they turned that into a theme park powerhouse. Now, if it's mountains and snowy region and shit, it's only but so much you can do. It's only but so much you can do with that. So it's not quite the same thing. Now, the other thing they got going on, and for the life of me, I can't quite wrap my head on how they got this going on, but California got a bunch of climate shits like happening all at the same time. Florida, number one thing that they worry about, that we worry about, I must say, would be like I say, hurricanes and things of thunderstormic nature. Like I say, in that Tampa region, they like one of the highest lightning strike areas of the country. But California, what they have, not only do they don't call them hurricanes, they call them, I think, typhoons over there or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's the same fucking storm. But not only do they have that, these motherfuckers got mudslides, they got the plate tectonics, they got the fault lines, so that means they have fucking earthquakes that, like, what the fuck? Earthquakes also lead to a lot of those cracks in the road, the land separating and shit, and fucking wildfires. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the shit just catch on fire spontaneously. Like, and they, like, just spontaneously. Like, I guess the nature finds a way to kind of replenish its forests or its grasslands or whatever, lightning strike or something, and it gets so dry in certain places that that shit will just catch on fire. Now, I haven't been to California. I have been to Las Vegas, and I will say this: one of the first things that stand out is when you in that area, the first thing you feel is the air difference. Like I stated, Florida, no matter where you at in Florida, this bitch is humid like a motherfucker. Like you can feel the moisture in the air, and it makes it feel muggy and sticky. But if you in a place like Vegas or somewhere close over there where there's not a lot of moisture, oh man, it feels like you gotta struggle to breathe. It's like the air is so thin, you know what I'm saying? But it makes hot a whole different kind of fucking hot. Now, outside of your places like Los Angeles and fucking San Diego and all the cute cities, you're gonna have some shit like Death Valley and all those other places that's like fucking desert. Florida, far as I know, and like I said, I've been here 35 years, don't have any deserts. It rains too much here. Like I said, it rain at the drop of a dime over here. But this same state that they try to compare to, Florida, also has deserts. Like that means you have a certain region within that state that doesn't receive enough rain to be considered just regular, like regular land. Like I think to be considered a desert, it only gets a certain amount of inches per year or whatever. And Death Valley is one of the hottest and driest in the country. Like shit, go figure. And like I said, I know up north around the Sacramento area, it snows. Like I say, in Florida, I live in North Florida. And like I said, I may have seen a snowflake maybe once or twice. But they actually have snowstorms up there. So imagine this. You got a state that not only has fucking typhoons, which is hurricanes that needs warm shit and brings rain and fucking all that type of shit, but you also have earthquakes, some shit that I ain't even been in an earthquake, you know what I'm saying? But I be seeing it. I'm quite sure that's got to be a real scary thing to deal with, especially if you in a building and ain't no warning. At least with a hurricane, you can see that shit on the news that it's coming and get prepared. Earthquake, I mean, it could happen today, tomorrow, next year. But even according with all that, you still have wildfires, and that to me just is baffling that you would have all of that within the same region. But with that being said, like I said, Florida from a land standpoint isn't quite as big as California. So California covers a lot of areas. So I mean, it has more than one climate area. So if you really, now that we got down to the conclusion, we kind of got both of the goods and bads out of both states. I would say if you were looking for to make it as a big movie actor or a big celebrity superstar, I would say you would probably be more fond of California, or you're probably lending to California. But as I'm being objective, as I'm really like wearing on all the pros and cons of both sides, in all honesty, outside of you being a celebrity or you having like a lot of money or you just like the outdoors type shit, Florida is going to probably win out. I'm going to tell you why. Because there's a lot of those beaches in California that aren't really beaches. Now, if you look at the Florida coastline, most of the Florida coastline is going to be some beach somewhere. Not all of it, because Jefferson County, the county that I'm in right now, doesn't have a fucking beach. But it touches the Gulf of Mexico. Go figure. So, but it's a bunch of swampy shit or whatever. But you could get to it if you needed to, but it's not sexy beach. But the reason why I'm saying that, because a lot of California is cliff. Like, it's cliff. Like, so it's not like all of it is going to be nice and accessible. A lot of that shit is actually quite fucking deadly, because they sit up on these big high-ass elevations, and then, like I said, they have these plate tectonic shits that's going on. So that's highly fucking dangerous, especially when you're dealing with heights and elevations, when you're talking about mudslides and all of that. Now, as far as sun and you know, sunlight and shit like that, I think they're probably going to be about even there. But I would prefer the humidity over that dry air. Like, that dry air, that shit ain't what's popping. I mean, I'm thinking that the humidity was aggravated until I seen what it felt like without it. But to be fair, the humidity is going to also bring all them fucking bugs. You know what I'm saying? Like, when it's summertime, man, you got to have you some repel, some spray, or some shit. Because these mosquitoes don't give a fuck out here, man. I'm talking about them bitches coming through clothes. You know what I mean? But I'm quite sure they probably got mosquitoes in California. But I just think it probably won't be as bad as a Florida. But Florida has more places of tourism, I would think. You know what I mean? Because outside of like the main big cities in California, it's gonna be a lot of those places that ain't known for all of that. You know what I mean? Like Los Angeles is probably one of their biggest like attractions, and that's like one city. But in Florida, you can throw out a lot of different cities, and they got their own thing going on. So all in all, to sum this up, I mean, I was being as objective as possible. And California, I could see why people would compare it to Florida, but just based on the fact that they have a lot more going on natural-wise, it just wouldn't be my pick. You know what I mean? I'm kind of a homer on this one. You know what I mean? But I would not knock nobody for liking that. But like I said, if you're trying to make it big and you really a risk taker, you want to go and surf, you want to go and fucking jump off a cliff, you want to be a Hollywood movie actor, then I would definitely see California being for you. Just watch out for them gangs over there. That shit's real big over there. But Florida, the main thing in Florida is you can't be scared of water, because that shit's everywhere. And it's like this: be careful where you digging holes. But other than that, man, I think Florida would kind of win out, just because outside of rain, water, wind, shit like that, it's actually pretty straight. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no snow over here. California got snow. Ain't no wildfire really over here, because it's way too wet for all that wildfire shit. Ain't really no earthquakes over here. You know what I mean? The main thing is just wind, rain, and that lightning. Like, if you scared of lightning, that's going to be some other shit, because, boy, they'll light up the sky over this motherfucker. But California just has so much other things that go on that don't go on over here. So the things that they do have as an advantage is kind of outweighed by the disadvantages. Florida is the complete opposite. So We'll get y'all again next week with something different. You know what I mean? I want to throw these geographics in there. See what y'all think. I'm quite sure that a lot of people from Florida might see it as like, okay, you just picked the whole state. But I went through and labeled out this, that, and the third by why, who, what, how, and all that. So I want to also hear from you people from California too. If I like missed something or left something out about y'all state, man, y'all let me know, man. Because like shit, knowledge is power and I'm trying to get strong. So with that being said, man, I'll see y'all next week on another episode of Versus.